Nima, so what do you do? How do you spend your days? What keeps you busy? What are you passionate
Nobody
about?
knows what she does, actually. I'm trying to help.
Don't say that. Don't say that. That is hidden from you does not mean, Nima does nothing. Nima spends her day drafting policies. I'm a policy developer.
Okay.
Yes. So, and I consult as well. So a typical day for me is me having my list of to-dos, having to check them out first, and trying to finish up on the documents I have been building. Practically, it takes me about 3 to 4 weeks to, send in a draft of a particular policy that I'm working on for whatever company. I mean, done stuff in the multinational space as well, trying to give them ideas on, CSR and things like that they intend to pursue. Then there's also, I'm currently reading for my SQE exam, a solicitor's qualifying exam. So on the side, I'll just be a lawyer.
I was gonna ask what SQE was.
Solicitor's qualifying exam. So on the side, trying to be a lawyer in England. Yes.
Okay, so I think we will just try to start. I'm hoping that Amaka is able to get in. I'm not, this is not very good, but we're already 10 minutes out. Okay, so thank you everyone. Welcome to the session on policy paper. What are companies doing, or are they doing enough to create safe spaces? I want to quickly start by some background from where I see our workplaces are getting a lot more, at least a lot more than when people started 20-something years ago, 15 years ago. There are a lot more verticals that people deal with now. You have to deal with culture, the age difference, the technology difference, and all of that. And in most cases, this has also not been very quick to get into the C-suite. So the top level people have not been able to grasp this very quickly. So we either intentionally go into this gap, having all blind spots here and there, leaving certain people out of what is the office. And it brings me to a tweet I saw recently. I'm sure some of you probably saw it, where someone says, working in a toxic organization so you can get a seat at the table. And then the response is a seat at the table where someone is having this nice lunch, but right under the rain. So that's how you can feel for a lot of people. And this afternoon, I'll just make quick introductions of the people who are here. I know we all already know each other, but I will just also try to walk through who is currently present. So first, we have Ojoma Ochai. Ojoma is Director of Arts Education. So Regional Director, I believe, at the British Council for Sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you for joining us, Ojoma. Yes, we have Onyinye Ikenna Emeka. Onyinye is the General Manager, Enterprise Marketing at MTN Nigeria. Welcome. And of course, Nima Arigbabu, who's a foreign policy analyst, and she's also the co-founder of YNFP initiative.
Now called External Relations. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. So, but we're also waiting for Amaka Onyebelupe to join. Amaka is the head of public affairs and communications at sustainability at Coca-Cola Company. My name is Ugo Nwosu. I am a technology and design enthusiast. I have a spread across business, non-profit work, and of course, public sector. So having gone out with those introductions, I think I want to start with asking a question. I'll start with Nima. Nima, when you hear safe space, what comes to mind first?
For me, when I hear safe space, the first thing that comes to mind is a sanctuary, right? Somewhere that you can let out how you feel without feeling judged or thinking about the repercussion of what you say. Somewhere that, you know, you can be free rather than feeling censored or guarded.
Makes sense. So, Onyinye, do you think, are you in alignment with this based on your experience and your current work? Your typical explanation or typical understanding of safe place?
Yes, but I would build on it maybe a little more. I would expand it a bit to say it's also where, you know, you feel a human balance, you know, as a person. So, you know, as human beings, there are elements or there are levers that help us to come across as balanced people. So it includes, you know, being able to feel physically safe, mentally safe, you know, socially accepted and therefore safe from a social perspective, and of course, financially safe, and also spiritually accepted. So I think that's why I'll just expand on it a bit. But Nima is very much on the right track for me. I align with what she's saying. But it's just that in the workplace, you just have to make sure that if I, as an employee, if I come into the workplace, I want to just feel like, you know, this place, the environment, the whole balance is good for me all around.
Okay. So I think, yes, I saw the little drift that I was kind of looking for there. But at the same time, I want to go to Ojoma. Ojoma, you are probably quite, you are one of the guys who, when everyone walks, oh, this is one of the bosses. Now, from the point of someone who is in that level of management, what is your definition of safe space? What do you see it as?
Thanks for that. So I'd agree with what Nima and Onyinye have said. I think that regardless of where you are in an organization, a boss or not a boss, you know, you do want to be in a place where you feel valued, where you feel like you can bring your whole self to work and not have to censor yourself because the air of the culture does not allow you to be yourself. So I think there's really something about feeling valued. I think also there's something about trust and being able to trust that your colleagues, the organization will do the best by you and that they have your back and they have your interests at heart. So I would agree that with everything that have been said, but I think that those are two key things. I think there's also something about integrity and an organization that says what it means or a management that say what they mean. And it links to trust, right? So when they say something, you know that there isn't something else going on at the back and that the other shoe will drop at some point. So yeah, I think those are some of the key factors, but I think it's the same regardless of where you are in the organization. At the end of the day, all of us are employees, right? We work for a corporate, yes. You know. So I don't feel like there's a different set of dimensions. Maybe it's more about responsibility, because I do think that in terms of, maybe I'm jumping ahead now, but in terms of creating safe spaces, leadership is such a critical part. So I would see that just maybe as the slight difference, depending on where you're sat in the organization.
Okay, so before I continue, people who have joined us on this panel, I want to welcome everyone. I might not have to see all your names. I see Onyinka, I see Oyeyemi, I see Nengi, I see Victor and Aruswam. Welcome. please feel free to type into the chat. Just make sure that your tab is on session so that you're not typing for the whole event. Make sure your tab is on session and then click on chat. Please feel free to either comments or pushing questions that we could consider as we go on. Okay, so I mean, I've heard what everyone says. There seems to be some level of alignment, but let me also ask this question. From a cultural perspective, as Africans, we, until recently, you still walk into where the elders are and they ask you to wait until you are being called to speak, right? From a cultural perspective. Now, the question here is it possible that our culture and how we grew up and our orientation also how different people understand what a safe space is? The other thing is, do they even know that something like this should be existing? Right? Joma, you want to take a jab on that before I move on to other people?
Sure. I think that culture does play a big role, right? So I always joke, I call my bosses obviously by name. Some of them are 20 years, 30 years, not even my bosses, like my peers, people that I manage. And I always joke that if my mother could see me, she would just not believe that this is the child she raised, because, you know, it's just not done, you know. So I think that culture plays a big role in how we relate and what we consider to be the sort of way to behave and the etiquette, if you like, for the workplace. I do, however, think that that's not an excuse, right? Like there are things that we've been raised with, and I feel like it's your job as you progress through life to identify things that are problematic in terms of your own beliefs, your own values, and your own systems, and adjust them. And it links to a range of things: age, of course, religion, sexuality. It's a whole range of issues that we're socialized in one way, but you start to question. And I feel like that's a mark of growth, and not just in age. As you grow, you start to question things, you start to analyze things, and start to understand the reasoning behind things that you've been told is conventional wisdom, right? So I think in the short answer to your question is yes, culture plays a role, but we all have a responsibility to question the things that we've been socialized in, and think deeply about what it means for how people feel and whether they're included, and so on and so forth.
Okay, I'm going to come back to Nye on another version of this, but Nima, in terms of culture, you are a young person coming up, playing in a place where you have to give your opinion and so on in a workplace. There's tendency for you to say, oh, I'm not being heard, or someone is saying, I'm not being heard. Do you, how much has culture worked on how you view safe spaces? Because your definition of safe space was like a sanctuary where someone is safe, where someone is not judged, right? Okay, I will take up on that. How much has culture played on how you understand what a safe space is?
Okay, so I'm going to use my personal experience. I'm going to use my personal experience to answer this question. So when I moved from Nigeria to England, I moved on the basis of studying. So when I got to England, it was a whole new world entirely. I mean, I get into class and I'm there, I want to answer a question, and I want to stand up and answer the question. I'm like, excuse me, sir. And, you know, my professor is looking at me like, what do you mean, excuse me, sir? Call me by my name. That kind of hit me differently, because it made me feel like, I don't understand what's going on here. Call you by your name. It took me a while to actually get used to, you know, being able to say, oh, hey, Jack, or something like that. Or, you know, asking my professor, like, okay, can you call me or email me? I mean, I grew up in Nigeria where to even have a conversation with a professor or have a conversation with someone senior, you have to literally like lick the floor to be able to have them listen to you before you do anything. You have to like do so much for them to actually pay attention to you. But I moved from there and I came here, and all of a sudden it was like a different world entirely. So that kind of made me feel very comfortable. Adapting into the environment was like, oh yeah, like, you know, I feel very comfortable in this space. I feel like I can do things and say things and not, you know, be judged or pushed away and things like that. So looking at it, there was a time when I decided to take like, you know, a holistic, you know, view at the whole thing. And I was like, yeah, culture plays a huge role in how people, you know, are accepted in a society, or how they react to certain things that they're facing, right? If you don't try to let people feel comfortable, right, it would make things difficult as to how the person progresses. Now, if my professor didn't tell me at the time that, hey, you can call me Jack, there's no need of you adding sir, or, you know, say, you don't have to stand up, sit down and answer the question that you want to answer. If I had done that, I'm sure I wouldn't have gotten as confident as I am today. I would have carried on with what I had learned growing up in Nigeria, where I'll even be too scared to tell the elder that, look, what you're saying is actually wrong. What you're saying doesn't make sense. Think of it in this manner, and this is what works.
Okay.
I mean, hold on.
I'm going to cut you off there, forgive me, but just mentioned something about telling an elder that what they said is wrong. Now,
yes,
question is, whose responsibility is it to create a safe space? So, Onyinye, from your point, whose responsibility? Is it supposed to be a management thing? Are there supposed to be written rules, industry associations, government? And so whose responsibility from your view?
Okay, I would say it is a collective responsibility, and everyone, every player in the ecosystem has a role to play. Now, if I move it straight into, you know, looking at organizations, yes, as Ojoma mentioned, the leadership has a very strong role to play, you know, because you have to look at creating a safe workspace as a very critical element of building the culture of the organization. They're not two separate activities. And so every organization starts out to build a particular type of culture riding on expected behaviors. Now, the important role that the leadership has to play is to be able to effectively articulate what those expected behaviors and the way to make sure that beyond articulating them, they actually start to permeate the organization and actually form a part of the culture is to make sure that it impacts on everyday activities and everybody is included in the process. Now, if you're able to effectively pull everyone into the understanding of the need for safe workspaces, then you start to see the change desire. So, for example, I may be a leader within the organization, and there are some set rules that have been outlined or expected behaviors that are supposed to drive diversity, you know, and inclusion within the organization. If I know them, but I do not make sure that it's being practiced in my area of control, then there's a problem. Now, if those items of or expected behaviors are being communicated continuously to members of staff and employees, and they are not actually acting it out, there should be ways to monitor and track behavior. So what you would find at the end of the day is a situation where every single member of that ecosystem is playing a role to make sure that the environment is a safe one for everyone within it. Now, externally, you asked whether there's a role for government to play, and I think the answer is yes. Because again, from a macro perspective, the government, the citizenry, the government have the responsibility for the welfare of the citizenry. And if your citizens are employees within an organization or within different organizations, it is also the onus is upon the government to make sure that there are certain rules and regulations that are in place to ensure the safety and full comfort of every member of each organization. And that is why you have, from time to time, you have government parastatals who are responsible for checking different elements of, behaviors within organizations. You have them managing things like the safety, health, environmental concerns. You have government parastatals that come in to check that, even what the way the employees are being treated is fair, even for when those organizations do not have unions and things like that. So it's a collective effort that is required from everybody within the ecosystem to ensure that the workspaces are as safe as they should be.
Okay. Everyone will say it's possibly a collective effort, but from the definition of this session, one of the reasons why this session actually came up was to ask what organizations are actually doing, which means somebody somewhere is complaining that they are not being included. And it could be intentional, it might not be intentional. There might also be situation of troublemakers. So there are people who, once they work somewhere, if it is not the way they want it, it means that they are excluded. It means that things are not going how it's supposed to go and all that. Now, can we actually drive down to individual people? So, so I'll ask Ojoma, what would be your expectations, for instance, for a young employee who just joined the organization? What would be your expectations from this person, even when you have put in the rules in place, you have tried, you've been trying, or you have not been trying? No, because these things also happen in a way that we don't know when it happens. So basically, someone is underrepresented, no one is mentioning that they have issues. I take, for instance, if everyone in the organization are young people, no one has ever had kids before, no one would think about a nursery for children in the office. Okay, and suddenly, one person who has kids in the organization and needs to take care of the child on the day of work, the thing starts. So what, from your view, what do you think would be the expectations from someone who has just joined an organization?
So I feel like that's a loaded question. There's different elements to it. So as Onyinye was saying, in terms of a collective effort, I do feel like there are a number of imperatives for inclusion, right? There's the moral imperative, like we were inclusive because it's the right thing to do. There's the business imperative, we're inclusive because it makes business sense, right? And the data suggests that, for example, if you have more women on your board, you can be making up to 15% more than your competition. So there's a business reason. But a really important reason is the legal imperative to be inclusive. And I feel like, to your point about what should the expectations be, I feel like it is the role of regulation. There is a place for government and governance.
No, I want to take you back. I know that there's place for regulation, but I want you to actually tell me what you think. So I just joined an organization, either like as a fresh employee or fresh graduate. What do you think I should do in terms of this conversation about? So let's leave the regulators and the corporate aside. From my own view as a new person, what should I do?
What should you do, or what should you expect? Because your earlier question was, what should you expect?
What should I do? Because what should I do will be your expectation of me.
Okay, so my expectation of you. So I think that's in the processes and policies. Every organization is governed by a set of policies, right? So in the British Council, for example, we have a very clear diversity and inclusion strategy where we say we have these 6 or 7 areas of diversity: race, religion, ethnicity, sexuality, gender, and so on. And we have very clear guidelines that say, if you're signing up as an employee, these are the things that we expect you to do. This is the code of conduct. These are the behaviors that we expect from you. So I think all of those are encoded in the processes and the policies. And when you're coming on as a new employee, it is expected that you will familiarize yourself and that you're signing up to that code of conduct. And that's on the policy side. There's also the culture. And I feel like there's also the onus on you as an employee, with support from the organization, to understand what the culture of the organization is, regardless of what is written in a handbook or what is written in a policy. Ideally, they'll be aligned, but we know that in real life, that doesn't always happen. So there's also the onus on you to understand the culture. And sometimes the role for you as a new employee is to question why the culture is the way it is, if it's not inclusive, if it's not diverse, for example. And so I think that from that perspective, there's what you kind of expect, but there's also what you can give to strengthen the system. So I would say that those are, to me, the expectations, is that they would be clearly written out. And as an employee, it's your job, literally, to know what is expected of you and deliver in line with those policies.
Okay, let me go to the policy, madam. Now, these are established organizations, okay? British Council probably has their own rules already written. It's 75 years or so of great work. NTN from South Africa to Nigeria, they already have this written. Now, even from a small organization perspective, from a startup, how do you this can come to pass? So we have seen a lot of situations where the startup is based on whatever the owner says, that's where it ends, and all that. It's his dream, it's his drive, and all that. But from a small organization perspective, from a new organization, what do you think? How do you think this can actually be infused as they grow?
Okay, so this question goes to the question you're asking is about what do I think companies can do in terms of like with their employees, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Okay. So working in the policy space, the beautiful thing about policy making and policy development is that, it evolves over time. Like you can make a policy today, and after you monitor the policy for a set number of months or years, you see that the policy isn't working, then you try to innovate and try to change the approach and see if it will work better. Now as an employee, I would rather, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but one mistake I've noticed in terms of policy making is how with the cancel culture, let me use that as an example. Somebody makes a comment on social media, for example, and sparks a reaction, a comment that goes against, public discourse or the morality of the public. Then you have people, tagging the company and asking that the person is fired and things like that. I hope this is in line with the question.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And this is the same way. So you have, people tagging the company and asking that the person gets fired. Mm-hmm. I personally don't like that idea,
because that on its own is you trying to regulate, you know, the person's mind or what the person says or how the person thinks. You as an employer, you're paying for the skills the person is bringing on board. You're not paying for how the person thinks. Yours is to make sure that they deliver what they're meant to deliver. They deliver, you know, things according to their job descriptions. You're not saying that, you know, I am censoring your mind or censoring how you think, right? So I personally, I would let people do what they want to do. And if they go above, I mean, they go outside the confines of the law, let's still use the same instruments that are there to deal with whoever you want to deal with. Or you just let the public opinion itself deal with the person. Do you understand? Rather than bringing that into your company and trying to fire people just because they made certain comments. The dangerous thing about this is that even when it goes against what I say or, you know, things that I believe in, the company can't really do anything, right? Because the company is the company, the person is the person. Let's try and make that, you know, distinction between the people. Like, let this person stand alone. You're doing whatever, as long as you're not affecting or it's not affecting your input in the company.
Okay, thank you for opening that very huge kind of. So Onyinye, is the company, the person, the person. So today you are a GM at MTN. Are there things that you can just not say, no matter how strong you feel about them?
I think the direct answer is yes. And the reason is I would explain to you why. First of all, it has to do with the role that you occupy. If you occupy a role of either leadership or a role that is significantly external within an organization, you have to understand that to some extent, what you say, even personally, you know, can impact the way your organization is seen, especially if what you say is at total variance to the how do I put it, the culture, the values of the organization. So you really can't, you know, quite separate yourself from the organization at a certain level. Now there are some cases where, you know, as an individual, you probably decide to have a view on a social topic. Now, I think, you know, depending again on the relevance of that social topic to the values of your business, you know, it would definitely have an impact. So it's a bit difficult to separate yourself from. It's like saying I come on this this program, you know, this session, and I'm dressed like Nima. I mean, really. Okay, so I mean, for obvious reasons, you have to understand what I mean. I can't be caught dressed in the colors she's currently with on. You understand what I mean? Because I mean, what message am I sending? So there are some things that you just, and I'm just trying to be very honest here. So you can't quite separate. You can't say you've gone on to a program and you're being introduced as Onyinye Emeka, General Manager, Enterprise Marketing, MTN, and then you do start to speak in a manner or about in a context that is totally disassociated from the culture or the beliefs of your organization. I mean, you can't do that. So my view is, it's not that, I mean, it's not that linear. It's not that straightforward. But there is always the ability of the external stakeholders to view you in the light of your organization. And so when they make those things like what Nima is referring to, you know, when you make a comment on social media, yes, and you get fire her, fire him, send him off, how can it's left for the organization to view that in its own light. Now, unless there is actually a reputational damage to the organization or a financial impact to the organization, The organization may seek to look at it in the context of its own merits. So what was it that was said? How does this impact our business? And what can it do to either negate what we're trying to drive or impact our bottom line? Let's remember, every business or every organization is in business to make money. You're either there to make money or you're there to make an impact, like the British Council. But I know British Council makes a bit of money sometimes. But you're either doing the two. And so you always have to, be clear about what you stand for as an organization. And you expect that your employees, and I think it's part of the, your employment contract, your employees need to adhere to behaviors that are expected. You might shake your head.
No. It's me trying to. No, I'm serious. I'm fine. I'm just trying to. So what I do is I'm trying to exercise my neck once in a while.
No, don't mind me. I know that. I'm just kidding around. So yeah, but it is what it is. So it makes it almost impossible to like dissociate yourself from the organization.
Okay, so
that is my view.
Ugo, can I quickly come in here?
Okay, please go ahead.
Just quickly. So you see, like I said, when I was leaving Nigeria, I left with like tons of things that I had picked up. But when I got here, it was like a different world entirely. They gave the leverage to literally just leave you on your, go on a free reign, right? And do what you want, as long as it doesn't affect the company or what you put in directly. I'll give you a quick example. I work with, I'm currently training under like an international lawyer. And I don't know if you ever came across the tweet where we were on a panel like this, and it was just like my first week. Mm-hmm. And this woman then comes and she's like, the panel, the moderator asked her, she was asking my boss and telling my boss, so how do you then try to manage, juggle your home and your workspace and things like that? Women here hate that question because they know that question is not one question you will ask a man, right? Now, the way she answered the question made me feel really, really comfortable working with her, because I knew fully well that, yes, my boss is someone that would always look out for me and my interests. She is someone that I am comfortable enough to speak to. In fact, at some point, when I was meeting her, I would go there dressed all, looking like I was going to court. And she's like, listen, first of all, we don't wear, like, I don't know if anyone has noticed, but in English court here, they have certain colors, yes, right? But they don't wear the whole garb and everything like that. They make them feel very comfortable because they know that your inner self, how you feel internally, is what impacts the output that you put out. Your outputs, your work ethics, your deliverables and everything. If you have a culture or you are in a space where you are comfortable enough to do what you want to do, you would find out that these people would put in their 100. I'll give another example in a sector of tech, right? These people do what they want to do. They let them do what they want to do because they believe that the creativity comes.
Okay, I think.
Ugo, can I just say something? Whilst we wait for.
I don't know why, but
yes. But let me just say something while she comes back. Two things. One, I think the conception that women here are afraid to talk about how they juggle home, work, and everything else. No, I don't think that is true. I am a mother of 4, and I am a very, in my opinion, successful career woman, and I'm happy to talk about it. So I don't have any issues with that. Now, in the line of the examples she's giving, let me give another very common one. So, we just went through the American elections season, and you have President Trump's press secretary, Kellyanne McEnany. Now, she has her views, all right? She has her post-election views. But let me tell you something. You can go and check her out on Twitter. For all her personal post-election views, they are expressed on her personal page. All right. Her page that speaks to her being the press secretary is being left for press secretary work. So again, it's not as it's not like saying you can't be who you are or you can't express yourself the way you want to. I mean, there are loads of things that organizations are doing, and I can tell you very happily that MTN is one of those places where, you know, there's a proper process in place to make sure that there's diversity and inclusion, and the women at work are as comfortable as their male colleagues, even if not even more so. Yeah. All right. I mean, we got to a point where we had this women's club, and at some point we started feeling sorry for the men, so we let them form.
We are always very disadvantaged. We're the disadvantaged guys, by the way, right now.
Yeah, you know, the guys say
it's
that
just
now.
not good. But
yeah, so
I mean,
exactly. So I think there's a lot being done, but it's about separating and understanding that as a person, if you are committed to a particular cause, or if you're contracted in a certain manner, regardless of who or what you believe you are personally, for what you've been contracted for, you need to at least adhere to that.
Thank you very much.
I mean, this is quite interesting for me. So these are some certain perspectives that people hold, and we all basically discuss it in our small groups and all that. But what I want to find out at this point, do we know any practices that are currently happening? That I know, for instance, Virgin Atlantic in the UK is using reverse mentoring to be able to ensure that they close the gap. But does anyone know anything that is happening within this region that's actually trying to address this situation? Because sometimes we can have these conversations, but there are actually no documented or studied. So I don't know if anyone here has such situations, or anyone who is also on the from the audience that no such can please put that across here.
So having worked in the still working in the policy sector, there was a particular policy I worked on a team here for someone for a sector in the government, and our policy was asking that companies add it to the offer letter given to the individuals. Given to the individual every offer letter. You know how you add that your offer, your benefits and all of that. We also said we had to mandate it into organizations will be able to say that employees can actually go to psychologists, psychotherapists to discuss, right? They, I think it's once a quarter or how you need it. So we added the importance of psychotherapy and, seeing shrinks and things like that to discuss. Now, the company does not have the right to actually ask about what's going on, but the psychologist has the right to actually tell the company that, oh, this person needs leave, because I feel like she's getting stressed from work or something. And if she comes to you and says she needs the leave, just let her take it because she needs it. We added that bit. We also added, I think, the importance of, I can't remember the last one, but the really predominant one was, trying to make sure companies add psychological visits or visiting shrinks and psychotherapists and things like that into the offer letter that they've been given to their employees.
Okay, that's interesting. I haven't heard that before. Anyway, before we I to also welcome Amaka. Sorry, you have missed most of our quite interesting conversation because you're struggling with technology. But now that you're here, we've had a whole lot of conversations, but at this point, we're talking about best practices in terms of safe space. So, but I would like you to quickly maybe share with us your experience. I was looking for to do this. Number one, like when understand the concept of safe spaces, and secondly, did you have like a transition? Did you have a different kind of understanding and another kind of understanding at different times in your career?
Yeah, thank you so much. Apologies, really, I have been struggling, but I think I listened to some of the sessions before I was able to join into the video session. I must say that even so, like previously in my own experience, I've been fortunate to actually most actually place a lot of emphasis on safety as it were. I would say that I'm one of the lucky few that earlier on in my career, it has been a deliberate attempt of female employees. I don't think it's to actually limit it to male employees, because sometimes the male also is safe spaces to be able to function very well. So as little as for paternity leaves, we have issues where some male employees also are struggling because they need an equal time or the time to a newborn. I've had both my former wife and right now, so at least some time to attend to the limited to the female employees, and also a special focus because the issue continues to be a top issue on how we're creating our system. We have situations for you have a female employee that is struggling with having to manage her situation and also take care of her newborn. I say that most times it is creating that freedom so that people can speak up, to listen, and to be able to kind of bring out some tailor-made approach. When you look at the policy might be there, but it might not solve all the challenges. So that having that the free listening spaces where employees are able to come up and their issues discussed would actually make that the one size fits all approaches. So you have to be very deliberate in how organizations are a bit deliberate. So I've been fortunate to have, for example, Coca-Cola today, we have an employee even before the lockdown who has to, after her maternity leave, work from home because she was struggling to have a help that would help her manage her newborn. That policy that was fit for everyone, but you tailor some issues to be able to meet some particular when that kind of issues come up. And on the overall, I think for me, it's how we are able to also evolve with the timing. So the pandemic has created a on the safe space environment. People were working from home for long hours. People, well, in terms of having work-life balance issues and psychological issue was coming up. Employee assistance programs that are actually available to actually make, for example, Nima has actually given an example of how people, they have it in their employment. In some cases, it's kind of an option that is available that anywhere around the world you have access to such assistance, be it an issue of maybe you're going through relationship issues up to the point of work, it can be your personal life. As well, because have such a able to assess such care. Or
okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Amaka. I'm going to basically try to cut you off there. We have 3 minutes to go. I think I have something about safe reporting. Now, the one last question I want to, because you mentioned something about people being able to speak up. There's a whole everyone speak up and everyone speak up now, but do we actually have safe reporting mechanisms? So if something happens in my department or in the whole office and it's affecting me or a certain kind of people, should there actually be a process where one can report and it's be investigated or worked on, no matter how tiny or how minute the person could be? Do we have existing today? Ujoma, do you have idea of such situations existing?
Sure. So most large organizations will have a whistleblowing mechanism through which you can make anonymous reports and sort of boycott the chain of commands that will intimidate you into not saying what needs to be said. But I'm mindful that that's big organizations, right? If you work for a SME or if you work for a small organization, it becomes a lot more difficult. But I feel like there's still ways that can be tackled, because at the end of the day, whether you're an SME or a one-man business, you're still accountable to your customers, you're accountable to whatever supply chain you're playing in. So even if you're a small business, you're working for MTN, in a way, and I'm sure that MTN will have standards in terms of what it is they're asking you to adhere to. So I think that in that sense, there's also ways that you can hold small organizations to account, because they're accountable to bigger organizations, they're accountable to investors, they're accountable to their board. So I feel like in such an instance, it's a bit more difficult, but you can find ways through which you can get some redress or some way for the issue to be addressed. Back to that thing about regulation, I do think still that where regulation works, there's independent bodies where if your own organization is not putting channels in place, you can either go to a labor office or a sort of general union and so on to report, which I don't know that we have that many in this country, but I think those are some of the ways that redress can be sought.
Okay, I think I've actually technically run out of time, but in closing, I want to take on more on just 35 seconds, not too much, on Amaka and Nima. Punishments or things. Abroad, people could boycott companies, right? Someone can say, I don't want to work for XYZ company because they have this kind of policy and so on. Considering our situation here, people are hustling to even get, you see, MBAs doing entry-level job. Question now is, how should we manage? How do you think from an employee, someone who's young in the organization, or even the society learn how to put pressure on organizations who are not trying to support the creation of safe space? Let me start with Amaka, then I'll go to Nima, and then we'll close.
I think the best way, I think the evolution of social media has also made a lot of things easier. For me, also still is the regulation have to be in place. Right now, it's very difficult to hold those organizations accountable. And for fear, a lot of people would not go the normal route to do those reporting because the system has not been. So it's a work in progress for now. One day we're going to get there. But right now, there are organizations like FCPC that has been set up, very strong advocates of some of those things. But the challenge is that people are still not bold enough to be able to use such channels to hold this organization accountable.
Okay, so Nima, let's hear from.
I think this is the part where CSOs and non-governmental organizations in that space actually come into play. If, for example, you feel like you've been, treated unjustly, you try to report to the CSOs and let them have you take it up with, the FCPC. I think that SCCP or something. Sorry, that particular place if you do not want to be out there. Because with multinationals, for example, when you become like out there, which also goes back to what I was saying about censorship and not being able to be held accountable for what you put on your personal page. If, for example, they can talk to those CSOs and those non-governmental organizations to, listen to their plight or how they feel, and those CSOs and non-governmental organizations take it up with the companies themselves, saying, this is what we feel like is going on in your company, and we have our eyes on you. So if you're not going to do the right thing, we'll actually take you to the court of public opinion and let them do just on you. So you would have to take it up with them by yourself. So I feel like, that also brings in a level of accountability as well, how companies treat their staff and how staff treats the organization.
All right, people, thank you very much. It's been quite interesting listening to all of you and moderating this session. It's been insightful. I have learned a whole bunch of things and also seen different perspectives. I think if anyone would like to continue these conversations, either on different people's line of thought, you could contact the different panelists on each of their social media page. I think that could be shared. So please send me a direct message or type in something here, and we could share the different social media handles of the panelists to continue this conversations. Thank you, Ujoma. Thank you, Nima. Thank you, Maka. And I hope to talk to you guys some other time soon.
Thanks very much.
I'll be popping up into his email, so she will come and explain the raid.
Nima,
yeah, I'm coming for you. I will come and explain the raid.
It's a company. That's the computer.
Yes, now I'm coming for her. She will come and explain the raid.
Oh, you don't still understand it? Are you serious? Okay.
All right, guys.
I'll tell you what you read.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.